Floating point gives us the ability to store a much greater range of values. This means that we can work much more accurately. Now, if you represent colours in a range of 1 to 256 or even 65,000, when you perform colour operations, you can very easily get numbers that don't fit into these round integers, such as 141.5, 72.4. And if you perform these operations again and again and again as you work your way through a complex colour pipeline, then errors are going to occur, and these will build up to produce rendering artifacts. When we're working in floating point, we can work almost losslessly. As well as being able to very accurately map the colour range normally seen on a monitor, floating point lets us go way beyond that in terms of brightness and way below it in terms of darkness. Floating point gives us such a large range of values that we can start to do things like accurately map the intensities given off by extremely bright lights. Obviously, with only 1 to 256 colours, this would be completely impossible. Also, when you perform compositing operations in integer values, then obviously numbers get clipped very easily. You perform an operation which results in 259, well, that gets clipped to 256, or it results in 345, well, that'll get clipped to 256 again. So immediately you get a lot of loss of information. For this demonstration, I'm going to use this image from Bill Spitzak's website. He is an expert in all these matters and well worth reading up on. I'm using Shake for this demonstration because Nuke automatically converts any file that it reads in into 32-bit floating point, and on this image I want to work on it in 8-bit and also in float, and to look at the differences. Also, Nuke has a lot of ways of helping us with lookups and such, and I want to avoid those today. Let's have a good look at this image. I mean, it's very beautiful. Even though it's from an 8-bit JPEG and it's compressed, it still is very interesting. It's got some very interesting tones and colours, and there's a lot of brightness in these lights, which is great for us to work with. Now, I'm going to bring in this image twice and do two sets of operations on it, one in float, one in 8-bit. It's going to be a very intense brightness operation, render the file out, bring it in, do a reverse operation, and I can see whether we're working losslessly or not. Now, the other problem with not working in floating point is small rounding up errors accumulating. Unfortunately, I cannot build you a huge shake tree and sit here rendering for days to create these artifacts, but looking at this should give us some idea of what's going on. Okay, here we have JPEG in, and if we select it on the left, we see up here 8-bit. So that means that it's going to work in 8-bit. Now, then I'm putting on a bytes node with 8 here. That's just for mirror symmetry, because I'm doing the same over this side, but we know it's 8-bit already. Then I'm putting a node on that I've called sRGB off. Now this, I put in the equation here, 1 divided by 2.2, and that gave us this 0.4545. So that is a gamma node just stripping off the sRGB gamma, so that when we do our maths operations they're in lin, because gamma can cause its own problems, and at this point we're just looking at the difference between float and 8-bit. So in comes our image, the sRGB is removed, a brightness of 10 is applied, then the sRGB gamma is put back on, and then I'm rendering it out as an 8-bit TIFF. So simple. And on this side I'd have the same JPEG. I'm putting on a bytes node, and this time changing it into float. So here we can see if we select the image original this side, 8-bit, then I select the byte node, float. So from here on it's working in float. Then sRGB off, I don't want that confusing matters. A brightness of 10 is applied, very bright, but I'm kind of using a hammer sort of technique here, but it's just a good way of demonstrating what many operations could do. Then the sRGB is put back on, and then we come down here to the render out node where I am rendering out a TIFF, and it's still a float image, So there I render it out. Excellent. So let's render these two out, and then we're going to bring them back in, reverse the brightness, and see whether the image is undamaged. Okay, file in, and I've called it LA Bright 10 8-bit, brightness of 10. This is Los Angeles 8-bit. As much clarity as possible in the naming. On this right hand side I have LA Bright 10 and float. Excellent. Okay, let's go through the tree and have a look. sRGB off on the 8-bit one, sRGB off on the 8-bit one, on the float one. Now let's look at the brightness. Now the 8-bit one is very dark, and I can just see very crushed sort of image here. I mean, I'm looking at it in Lin, so I would expect it to be dark anyway. But yeah, so if you remember before, the brightness was of 10, and this is a brightness of 0.1, so we're dividing the brightness by 10, so that should be the same brightness, but it seems to be very damaged. So let's have a look over here at the float one, and the float one we have got lots of detail. So let's just compare these and just have a look at what we've lost. I mean, we really are seeing what has been lost, all the beautiful highlight detail in those lights, and it is very interesting to have a look at these two. Very soft dull greys there, lots of clipping, and you can just see whole bunches of colours that look very similar, which is what you would expect with an 8-bit and rounding up and down. Okay, so our 8-bit one with the gamma put back on, and then the 32-bit one with the gamma put back on. So let's just swap between those and just have a look and a think. With the 8-bit one we got lots of kind of large burnt out areas, but they're kind of burnt out and gone a bit grey. And then on this one we've still got those fine points of highlight. Okay, let's compare these to the original 8-bit image. Ah, here it is over here. So this is the 32-bit, which has gone through our crunching process, and the original 32-bit float, original. They're exactly the same. And then the 8-bit one, well, you can see it's just been completely destroyed. Okay, I have an example here of rounding up and rounding down errors. Bit of a classic. I'm going to draw a ramp. My dark grey is a value of 60 over 256, and my light grey a value of 200. So I just select the gradient tool and shift drag. There's my excellent gradient, almost banding already. And I go layer, new adjustment layer, brightness. Take the brightness up. Okay. Layer, new adjustment layer, brightness. Take it down, and I mean, you can see the banding there already. So I think that is the proof that the rounding up errors very quickly with repeated operations can bring up rendering artifacts.